She passed away on the 16th of August, 2026, a few days before she would have been 37 years old. Most of her fans found out about it from the few words her own father used to describe her. The story spread so quickly. "She was a great light and a natural force," he said. There is a much bigger story behind that short statement. It has to do with a fortune worth between $6 and $15 million. As she grows up, her daughter lives across the ocean, and her family is already very sad. What does Hayden Panettiere really leave behind? Find out what's new with her death and the question that still needs to be answered. It was Sunday night when the news came out. ABC News was told by her agent that Panettiere had died at the age of 36. Her dad, Skip Panettiere, said in a short statement that she was a great light and a natural force that brought a lot of love and happiness to everyone who knew her and to the millions of people who watched her on TV. At the end, he asked for privacy so that the family could deal with what he called an unimaginable loss. Any major news outlet that picked up the story that night asked the same thing, almost word for word. People who had been paying close attention to her over the past few months were hit especially hard by the timing. She spent a lot of the spring on a real press tour, going on podcasts and daytime shows to promote her book. Most people said she sounded more calm and sure of herself than she had in years. One reason the story spread so quickly is that the woman who seemed to finally be on solid ground died so suddenly just a few weeks later. This is something that doesn't happen very often when it comes to celebrity news. The circumstances are still not clear. Brian Hickerson, Panettiere's on-again, off-again boyfriend, is said to have flown from Los Angeles to the southern United States on the Saturday before she died. And police in Greenville, South Carolina, confirmed that they had responded to a call and started a preliminary investigation. Officials there said that early investigations did not reveal any signs of foul play or strange circumstances. However, the cause and manner of death were not made public at the time that this video was being made. Casey Kitchen, her publicist, told reporters that there was an investigation going on. This phrase has since been used in dozens of stories without much more information. There is a strange, quiet detail in older court papers that has to do with that trip to South Carolina. In 2018, not long after Panettiere and Hickerson started dating, police were called to Hickerson's father's home in South Carolina because of a fight between two drunk men. Panettiere was reportedly the one who opened the door for the arriving police officers. Years later, the last part of her life took place in that same state. A coincidence that hasn't been talked about much, but it adds another disturbing layer to a story that was already very sad for anyone who knows a lot about the couple's past. Almost as soon as the news got out, tributes started coming in. In a post, Viola Davis, who played Panettiere's co-star in the 2016 movie Custody, said she wished the world had more time with her and compared it to seeing a beautiful phoenix rise from the ashes. She also said that Panettiere's tests had become her witness. Antis and BC News both reported that co-stars from Bring It On, Heroes held similar events in Nashville on the same night. A lot of them talked about how warm she was in private that she never showed in public talks. A few people who used to work on Nashville said that she always remembered everyone's name and family information, from the camera operators and background acts to the actors. A small detail that kept coming up in the hours after she died was proven to be true. To understand why that loss was so important to so many people in so many areas of pop culture, it helps to start at the beginning. Back when Claire Bennett and Juliette Barnes were just babies, they were booked for their first ad before they could even crawl. A job that she had before she could walk. Hayden Les Panettiere was born in Palisades, New York, on the 21st of August 1989. Her mother, Leslie Vogel, was a soap opera actress and later handled her daughter's early career. Her father, Alan Skip Panettiere, was a fire captain. At 11 months old, she was in her first commercial. By the time she was 4, she had a recurring role on the ABC soap opera One Life to Live. After 2 years, she moved to Guiding Light, where the storyline of her character, batting leukemia, won her an award from the Leukemia and Lymphoma Society. A fact that isn't often mentioned in current tributes but was important to people when they first met her. She did the voice of Princess Dot in Pixar's A Bug's Life and played Cheryl Yost opposite Denzel Washington in Remember the Titans. When she was a teenager, she went back and forth between family films like Ice Princess and Raising Helen. Everything didn't fully prepare people for 2006, when a 15-year-old cheerleader who could heal any wound became famous almost overnight. Claire Bennett on NBC's Heroes kept her on primetime TV for 4 seasons, and the storyline about the healing cheerleader became so important to the show's marketing that Panettiere's face ended up on more Heroes merchandise than any other cast member, even the actors who play the show's main characters. After the show finished in 2010, she got the part of Juliette Barnes, a cruel but talented country star on the ABC musical drama Nashville. During the 6 seasons, she earned 2 Golden Globe nominations and became one of the most recognizable faces in Music City. People who have watched the show for a long time have said for years that Juliette Barnes was said to be based on real country artists from the time. Panettiere immediately pushed back on this rumor more than once, saying that the character wasn't based on any one performer, even though people were always comparing them online. Later, she played Kirby Reed in Scream 4 and again in Scream 6. She also read audiobooks, voiced Kairi in the Kingdom Hearts series of games, which introduced her to a whole new group of fans who had never seen an episode of Heroes, and did the voice of Kate in Alpha and Omega. Her last known part was in the direct-to-video thriller Sleepwalker, which came out earlier this year. A quiet end to a career that lasted more than 30 years and included almost every type of entertainment. Everything from daily soap operas to network high-end dramas to horror franchises and animated video games. After the 9th grade, she started having private tutors instead of going to school. This is a common situation for young performers, but it meant she missed out on many of the normal life milestones her peers did. She stopped going to regular school after she graduated from South Orangetown Middle School. In earlier interviews, she also said that she thought about taking a break from acting for a while to go to college. But Heroes made that plan impossible. Her family has English, German, and Italian roots. She sometimes talked about this in interviews when asked about her last name, Baker, which means something similar in Italian but is often pronounced wrong by fans who can't get the right 4-syllable rhythm. There is another side of Panettiere that is almost entirely missing from the current coverage of his life, one that had nothing to do with acting. You can learn a lot about who she was before she became famous from this. The money, the activity, and the fights she picked. Reports made after she died said that her net worth was between $6 million and $15 million. A gap big enough to show that there isn't much truth to estimates of a celebrity's wealth once you get past their main salary. A report on her finances that came out earlier this year said that most of her money came from Nashville, where she reportedly made about $75,000 per episode. That role alone made him close to $3 million over the course of the show's 124 episodes. Heroes is said to have added about $2 million more. The movie Scream 4 brought in an extra $1 million. This doesn't include her music career, voice acting work, or years as the face of brands like Neutrogena, Candies, Kohl's, and Donnie & Burke, for whom she designed a limited edition Kafkin handbag in 2008. There is a small story inside the bigger story that real estate tells. In 2008, she paid about $6 million for a house in the Hollywood Hills. In 2014, she sold it for just over $3 million. In October 2018, she sold a house in Nashville for $1.65 million. Around that time, her personal life was falling apart behind the scenes, a time overlap that probably explains why estimates of her estate range so widely, from $6 million to $15 million, based on which source you believe. A Panettiere who was 18 years old was already using her credit to pay for something much riskier than a brand deal long before any of that money stuff came together. She joined Sea Shepherd activists paddling on surfboards into a cove in Tai, Japan in October 2007 as the official spokesperson for the Whaleman Foundation's Save the Whales Again campaign. They were trying to stop the town's yearly dolphin hunt. People in boats hit the activists with sticks and pushed them back to shore. The Cove later published a video of the fight, the documentary that won the Oscar for Best Documentary Feature. After a few weeks, news came out that Japan had issued an arrest warrant for her for getting in the way of the hunt. She talked about the claim in public, telling reporters that she had only just learned about it and didn't think it would lead to anything serious, and one that the Japanese Fisheries Agency later completely disagreed with. In November of that year, PETA gave her its Compassion in Action Award for the trip. In 2010, she went back to Taigi with Klitschko and tried to meet with the town's mayor and fishing officials, but they wouldn't open the door to Union Hall, even though they had been inside minutes before. An article about her activity that came out just hours after she died called the Tai protest the bravest thing she ever did, and it happened without anyone being there. There was more to that activist streak than just one trip. She sent letters of protest to both the Norwegian and Japanese ambassadors, asking them to stop commercial whaling. She also defended traditional Aboriginal whaling practices as being different from commercial hunting. At a Greenpeace event in Alaska in 2007, turned vegetarian, and that same year joined the famous board of Ronald McDonald House Charities. A profile of her charitable work from around that time said that to raise money for ocean conservation causes. She also auctioned off a private dinner and a trip to see whales with herself. She was said to have had a small tattoo on her body that said, "Lavare senza regretti" in Italian. Longtime fans have brought up the fact that the word was famously spelt wrong many times in tribute threads over the past day as a strangely fitting footnote to a life that never seemed to slow down for anyone's comfort, including her own. She showed a part of herself in public through money and activism. But what really changed her in private happened over the next 10 years, mostly out of sight of the cameras until she decided to talk about it. Now we can see love, loss, and the inner fights better. In 2009, Panettiere started her most important relationship with Ukrainian heavyweight boxing champion Vladimir Klitschko. They met at a party for the launch of a photography book in which they were both featured. Before they got engaged in October 2013, the couple broke up and got back together several times. She gave birth to their daughter Evdokia Klitschko in Hawaii in December 2014. The relationship ended in the end, and in 2018, Panettiere made what she called a hugely difficult choice. She gave Klitschko full custody of Kaya while she got help for her alcoholism, drug abuse, and severe postpartum depression. This month, a detailed account of the custody agreement came out. It said that Kaya was born in Hawaii in December 2014 and has lived with her father in Europe for most of her life, instead of in the US. Years later, on a podcast, Panettiere said that her daughter knew she had two parents who loved her and that they were very close, even though they lived thousands of miles apart. She also said that Kaya never felt alone because both parents made sure she was taken care of mentally, emotionally, physically, and spiritually. Ka, now 11, spent most of her childhood in Europe with her father. However, Panettiere kept involved by visiting and having long video calls with Ka whenever she could. On those calls, Panettiere said they talked about really deep things, not just small talk. When she talked publicly about her postpartum depression, it had real effects on her career. A short time after she talked about the condition on a daytime talk show, Nutrena fired her as a spokesperson. This seems very out of place now, when you think about how freely celebrities talk about mental health these days. A short time after she broke up with Klitschko, Panettiere started dating Brian Hickerson. During their nearly 2-year relationship, they got into a lot of legal problems. In May 2019, he was arrested for felony domestic violence for the first time. He was booked early in the morning and released the next afternoon on $50,000 bond. A case that was dropped months later, after the couple was said to have gotten back together. In February 2020, he was arrested again in Wyoming on charges of punching her in the face on Valentine's Day. In April of that year, he pleaded not guilty to domestic battery. As of July 2020, he was facing 8 different charges related to their relationship. These included 4 felonies for hurting a spouse or lover, 1 misdemeanor battery charge, 2 felonies for assault with a deadly weapon, and 1 felony for trying to stop a witness from testifying against a criminal. In July of that year, Panettiere talked about the case in public. She wrote on social media that she was telling the truth so that other people in abusive relationships would be able to get the help they needed, and she was ready to do what she could to make sure the man never hurt anyone else again. Fox News broke down the criminal case and said that her lawyer said she had been abused mentally, emotionally, and severely physically for years before she found the strength to go through with the case. In the end, Hickerson pleaded no contest to 2 felony counts in 2021. He was sentenced to 45 days in county jail, 4 years of probation, 52 classes on domestic violence, $500 in restitution, and a protective order against him for 5 years. He was also not allowed to have any contact with her. In the end, they made up anyway. And stories say they were together again in the days before she died this month. Grief made these problems worse in ways that few people outside of her family fully understood. Jansen Panettiere, her younger brother and also an actor who was in films like The Perfect Game and The Martial Arts Kid, died suddenly at age 28 in February 2023. He had been having problems with his aortic valve and heart that had not been identified. In her autobiography, she wrote about that loss and how she felt guilty about it all the time. 3 years later, she told an interviewer that losing him was like losing half of herself. And the 2 brothers stayed close as adults, even though they spent most of their childhoods working in show business. Panettiere's autobiography, This Is Me, A Reckoning, came out in May 2026 through Grand Central Publishing. Her publisher called it an honest look behind closed doors that went into great depth about trauma, domestic violence, postpartum depression, addiction and recovery, and her brother's death. Fans stood in queue outside of a bookstore in Manhattan that month for the signing. Many people watched for the same reason. They wanted to hear a famous person talk about problems they knew they had in their own lives. It's hard to put what she leaves behind in the end into a single number. The value of the estate ranges from $6 million to $15 million, based on who you trust. Several dozen film and TV credits and a body of work that spans more than 30 years. A daughter who will hear her mother's own words instead of tabloid summaries as she grows up, and a family that was already sad from another loss a long time ago. Her daughter Ka, her mother Leslie Vogel, and her father Skip Panettiere will miss her. The same family that had just buried her younger brother 3 years before. That is once again asking the people who saw her whole life on TV for something that fame doesn't usually give you. Some space to grieve. She also left behind a story that has nothing to do with money. One about a teen who paddled into a Japanese cove because she thought it was important. A mother who made a very hard choice about custody for her daughter because she thought it was best. And a woman who wrote down every hard part of her own story in the last few months of her life so that someone else going through the same things could feel less alone. No matter what the investigation in South Carolina finds, that part of what she leaves behind will always be remembered because it is in her own words printed in a book that will be read long after this week's news stories are forgotten. This is the end of the video. Thanks for seeing. If you like this video, please like, comment, and subscribe to get more. Click on the movie that comes up next to read more exciting stories.